Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Continuing the Conversation, live from the APWA Congress Trade Show floor at the Expo Experience. My name is Emily Barta, and I'm going to be joining you on this conversation today. And yes, truly, we are having a conversation. Why? This isn't a session. We're not going to talk at you. We're not going to talk to you. We're going to speak with you. We want to get your voice heard. We want to get your questions answered. And this is all for you. So, everyone at home, you know the drill. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and tweet them to hashtag APWAExpo or go to the Q&A button in the lower left-hand corner of your virtual platform. And everybody in here in Denver, welcome. If you have any questions, go ahead and raise your hand. We'll bring the microphone over to you and get your voice heard. Or you can tweet as well on that hashtag APWAExpo. And who we're going to be chatting with is sitting next to me. This is Barbara McMann. She is the Executive Director of the National Complete Streets Coalition. Barbara, welcome back to Continuing the Conversation.
Thank you, Emily.
And now, Barbara has a session a little bit later today at 2 o'clock, so consider this a preview, if you will, and it's called A Complete Plan for Complete Streets. So the obvious place to begin is, what's a complete street?
We get that question a lot. A complete street is really a street that works for everyone who's using the transportation system. That's whether you're walking or bicycling or an older person or a transit vehicle, just anyone who's using the roadway. But we actually don't talk that much about individual complete streets. The complete streets movement is really about getting our elected officials and our community to really endorse this approach so that they're thinking about this every time they're working on a road project. So the they here is public works folks. How is it that you can integrate all users into all upcoming projects? And having a complete streets policy at the state or local level really helps you do that job and do it well and do it knowing that you have the support of the community for that more multimodal approach.
Now, you came up with this term, correct?
Yes, I helped coin the term, and we actually have a big coalition that's been working on developing what complete streets means. APWA is a member of the coalition, and we're really happy about that. There's also other organizations of practitioners, such as the Institute of Transportation Engineers, the American Planning Association, as well as interest groups such as AARP, been working on it quite a bit, American Public Transportation Association, and America Bikes, which of course is a bicycle advocacy group. So there's a lot of different organizations that are all moving toward complete streets and helping municipalities and states adopt complete streets policies. And our most recent policy is New York State just passed a complete streets law that Governor Cuomo signed just a couple weeks ago. So we're excited about that.
So where did this movement come from? Why do we need to have this term? Why do we need to have this movement?
Right. Well, it's an interesting question. I think there's been a move toward designing roads more for everyone over the last 20 years. There's a lot of talk about walkable communities, a lot of development of better ways to design for bicyclists. We see bus rapid transit happening around the country and really around the world to move people more efficiently on buses. And so there's really a need to think about our roads in a way beyond the traditional automobile level of service. So I think that's where the need came from. I think that the policy concept has really helped bring together all of these different groups that all want something out of that. We even have environmental organizations that see it as a sustainability issue and want to create roads that work better for different users so that you can get more people walking and biking. So it's quite varied, and I could even say the public health community is interested in complete streets because they want to see more people doing active transportation, getting out and walking and biking. So there's lots of different organizations that all would like to see our road infrastructure designed a little bit differently and designed from the get-go to involve everyone. And I think public works and engineers are a really important part of that equation, and that's why we really want to reach out, and we already have many engineers working on this.
Well, speaking of involving everyone, hopefully we're going to talk over the man on the mic. If you have any questions at home, go ahead and tweet those to APWA Expo or go to the Q&A button at the lower left-hand corner of your virtual platform. And let us know, do you have a complete streets policy in your municipality? Let us know. What about here in Denver? Do we have any questions? Do we have any comments? Do we have any experience with this, or is this brand new? Well, it's brand new to me, so I want to ask some more questions. Describe what a complete street looks like. I mean, I know what a road looks like.
Right.
It's got some lines and some cars and maybe some sidewalks, but what does a complete street look like?
Well, that's a tough question, because a complete street can look a lot of different ways.
Uh-huh.
In a rural area, it might be where there's not much traffic, where you have very low ADT. It might just be a ribbon of pavement that are shared by cars and a few bicyclists and a few people who are walking along it. In an urban area, especially in an urban arterial, that's where you really need a lot of infrastructure, usually, to make sure that everyone is safe. So you might see an arterial that's, you've seen thousands of them around the country. Often they're not complete right now, but what they can have is they can have bicycle lanes. They can have medians for pedestrians at the crossings, and obviously pedestrian crossings. Sometimes they'll have a bulb out so that the pedestrians don't have to go quite as far to cross. They may have special places for the buses to pull up and let their passengers off and let their passengers on. They may have traffic calming measures to really slow down traffic. If it's a place where you're really emphasizing the non-motorized users, you may want to do that. Okay. Other roads, most communities that are doing complete streets have different types of roads. They have roads that are really designed more for moving traffic, automobile traffic, and they have roads that are where they know there's going to be a lot more pedestrian activity, and they'll design the roads differently. So there's not one complete street. It's really more about thinking through every time a project comes up, what can we do to improve this project for the entire transportation, everybody who's using the roadway.
So completely customizable for your needs of your municipality. And speaking of needs, it looks like we need to turn to the virtual audience.
We do, Emily. Thank you. Regina and Mike for asking the questions. We actually have two coming in. One is, who gets the right of way? How is that worked out? And the other is, how wide, how much wider is the space that you need for complete streets?
Yeah, those are both great questions. Who gets the right of way? Now, I think they're probably meaning how is the road space allocated, as opposed to who yields to who in certain situations. Yeah. Complete streets often does mean that you're allocating the road space a little bit differently, and that you do have a place that's especially for pedestrians, a place that's especially for bicyclists. It's really a balance, or even a place especially for transit vehicles. We see that. So it's really a balancing act that has to do with who's using the roadway, what's happening in the community. Is there a senior center on one side and a senior housing place on the other side where there's going to be lots of older people crossing the street? Then you want to make sure that you have a really good crossing in that location. What was the second question again?
It was about how wide the street.
Oh, how wide does the street need to be? Well, that's an interesting question, because it's not an additive process. And most of the communities doing complete streets have told us that what they're really doing is they're thinking from the beginning. And they're not necessarily just saying, okay, we have our car lanes, and then we add a bike lane, then we add a sidewalk, and the whole thing gets bigger. It's really much more about, we have this much space, how are we going to share this? A very common application is a road diet, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Many communities are finding if you have an ADT of 20,000 or under, you can often take a 4-lane undivided roadway and turn it, I wish I had my slides here, and turn it into a 2-lane road with a center turn lane, and that leaves you enough room for bike lanes, and the center turn lane also gives you the space to have a pedestrian median. So you're really adding a lot of space for the different users. And the studies of these roadways are amazing. They have found that a crash rate goes down 18 to 46% when you do a road diet. So they're tremendously popular, and they're not very expensive, because you're really mostly talking about moving the paint. And many places are doing this in the course of resurfacing. Just as roads need to be resurfaced, they will move towards this approach.
Well, now, Regina, I'm going to tack on to your question. Okay, so if I'm in a community where we've only ever had cars on the road, and now the road includes a bike lane. What kind of signage or education should municipalities put out to re-educate the drivers on how to drive and how to educate the bikers on how to deal with the cars? Because if I'm coming up to make a right-hand turn, do I have to come to a stop and let that bicyclist pass? Or does that bicyclist have to stop so that I can make my right-hand turn if I'm in a car?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing to know is that most places there already are at least some of those bicyclists out there and some pedestrians out there. I'm sure everyone here has seen a situation where there's a beautiful paved road and then a tramped path in the grass with no sidewalk, right? Okay. That's a pedestrian. That's a homemade pedestrian facility, right?
Okay.
So there are pedestrians out there. There are bicyclists out there already. And the studies have shown that when you have a bike lane, it's much clearer to people where they're supposed to be. So they're clearer to the driver, clearer to the bicyclist. So that's the first thing, is that having that designation is helpful. The second thing is that the more pedestrians and bicyclists are out there, the more people get used to sharing the space and learning how to share the space. And some communities have done educational campaigns about sharing the roadway and giving people hints about how to do that. Pretty much it's the same rules of the road. When you're talking bicyclists and drivers, bicycles actually move very similar to cars, much more so than they do to pedestrians. So it's very similar, and once you get used to the fact that they go fast downhill and slow uphill, then you're okay.
But who gets the right of way?
So, well, if it's a through traffic situation, I believe that the forward moving vehicle would have the right of way. In most situations, they put a dashed line at the bike lane at the intersection to indicate that obviously the cars are going to be crossing into that space.
Okay. Now, we only have about 3 more minutes here with Barbara, so everyone at home, if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and tweet us to hashtag APWAExpo, or go to that Q&A button in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, and I think somebody has.
Yes, I have a follow-up question from Regina. Thank you. And that is, not all of the roads can just be converted, as you said, doing that center lane
right.
and 2 bike lanes. So how does the environment fare when this new program is put in place? And then the other question from Lawrence, thank you for joining us again today, and we expect to see you in Anaheim next year. But Lawrence wants to talk finances, so if you can close out with that, about where is the funding coming from, new sources, or is it competing with gas taxes and all that stuff?
Right. Okay. Well, as far as trees go, Complete Streets is very much about creating an environment that works for everyone, and people on foot especially really like trees.
Yes.
So you do not want to be getting rid of trees. In fact, the American Society of Landscape Architects is one of the founding members of the coalition and has been working very hard about how we can integrate vegetation and trees. So generally speaking, you're not going to take out a row of trees in order to, again, it's not that additive piece. You're going to try to keep that in place. In places that are hot, of course, shade is very, very important. The issue of cost is a big one that we get all the time. The first thing to know about Complete Streets is it's about using existing funds differently. It's not about coming up with special grant money so that you can kind of do this on the side. This is about every project thinking about what you can do for all users. Now, in some cases, you're not going to be able to do everything the first time out, so you might add that to a list for funding later. But we do see that places that make this commitment find all kinds of creative ways to start to improve the environment for all the different users without adding additional funds. We also see that Complete Streets are very popular with citizens and with the community, and that places that have Complete Streets policies can have an easier time passing bond measures and getting support for their street infrastructure. Seattle is a great example where they put forth a Bridging the Gap measure that was a Complete Streets measure and have been able to put in all kinds of infrastructure, and it's really because of citizen support this kind of work.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of questions and interest in Complete Streets. So tell us your website. Where can people go to learn more information?
We have lots of information, www.completestreets.org, and we have information about writing a policy. We have a whole series of fact sheets about most of the issues that we've talked about today. We have a map that shows where all the Complete Streets policies are around the country. You can sign up for our newsletter that comes out every month. We have our Twitter feed, which I think is hashtag Complete Streets, one word. I think that's what it is.
Okay.
And you can see it's very active. There's lots of stuff going on all over the country. So I encourage people to do that.
Well, and I encourage everyone here in Denver to go to Barbara's session at 2 o'clock today called A Complete Plan for Complete Streets. And for everyone at home and for everyone here, we've got another conversation happening in just 10 minutes. So if you go away, come back. Everyone at home, go do your business, but come on back at 12:45 Mountain Time. We are going to speak with John Hargett, who is the president of Pavement Restorations, about a topic that we all know and don't love, potholes. But we're going to talk about infrared asphalt restoration and how this could be your solution. So, Barbara, thank you so very much for joining us. Have fun at your session at 2 o'clock. Everyone here in Denver, everyone at home, we will see you back here at 12:45 Mountain Time.